Now, don't get me wrong, I get you. What in the world could the most fluffy, cute show of the season have to do with that point explaining the cycle of life, human greed, and need for conquest, and all these other deeper complex issues? Well, that is exactly what we're going to be discussing and trying to explain today in this video, so do stay tuned because this show, Fluffy Paradise, has some very interesting, deeper undertones I, and you as well, would not have expected. To begin with, I want to touch on one small point that Fluffy Paradise mentions that really few other isekai or let's say fantasy shows really indulge, and that is the point of, hey, these beings, even if it's animals or monsters, in this case monsters, they are intelligent, they are rational, they're not evil by nature here, they're not doing anything to be malicious or mean. They simply do what they have to survive as part of the grander system and the cycle of life in this universe, in this fantasy world. And as the show started to touch on that about the midway in to season 1, that is when, in a couple of episodes span, they really got me to think a lot about the cycle of life, survival of the fittest, and how that all ties into this very fluffy, cute show. This show went from being super cute and fluffy to really going hard and getting emotional of, hey, they all live in this fantasy world, and even though you have monsters and animals of all sorts and sizes that we can't really relate to, it does hit hard on the point of all these monsters, all these animals, even humans, are part of this grander scheme of things and this grand cycle of life. That the monsters and the animals, they're not evil, they're not malicious, they're not there to just do you harm. The only thing they want is to survive, right? They kill, not to hurt you, but because they have children to feed. They have themselves to feed. They have to protect their families, their tribes, whatever else. They're doing this because they have to. It's not a choice, it's a need to survive. And there is one specific scene in episode 6 or 7, I believe, where the show really exemplifies this in an emotional way. That is when the evolved goblin takes on this spider of some sort, and both are fighting to the death, basically. But the spider that attacked this evolved goblin, she wasn't doing it because she just wanted to kill him. She was doing it because she was starving. She had just had a baby, and she needed food. She needed sustenance for herself, but even more so for her new young offspring. And while she died, tragically, and somewhat emotionally in this scene, it really set beautifully the tone of, the world is brutal. The world isn't kind. The world isn't fair. The world is a horrible place now and again. And different living things will do unspeakable things to others just so that they can survive another day and provide safety and sustenance and shelter for their offspring and the next generation. And even while this spider seemed malicious and it was introduced as this scary looking monster, you really got to empathize with, hey, she was just doing what she needed to do to survive. And while the evolved goblin won the fight and killed her, you really still feel deeply with her that, hey, oof, this isn't some casual fantasy where you just kill some monsters and you cheer for the good side, quote unquote. This is all brutal, this is all sad. Nothing about this is making you smile or making you happy. Just in these 2 episodes alone, I was very impressed by, well, it wasn't overly explained or they didn't delve incredibly deep into it. I really started to think and explore this concept for this video because of the general points they hinted on and the emotional response it made me have to what they were showing on screen. And I do think it is a good lesson that, hey, no matter if you're human, a normal animal, or a monster, the cycle of life is never ending. It is continuing. It is, well, a cycle. And no matter how brutal or ruthless it may be, the fittest will survive, and everyone else will die. Now, I will get into another point about this concerning humans as the final point of this video. For that, though, I do find it somewhat interesting that while in the show, they spend these 2 episodes or 3 episodes really going into this, is it okay to just kill things? Is it okay to just dispatch of these monsters and whatnot because they're seen as evil? And the moral implications of this, they seem to have no issues whatsoever just murdering these bugs by the scores to use them for food and sustenance. Which also made you think for a second, like, okay, so do you only empathize in this show towards animals and monsters because they have some sort of intellect? Or they are similar to us in a way because they have emotional responses, they can feel pain? But these bugs, because you don't see them as similar to yourself, that they're just fine to absolutely murder in mass? I didn't really know. I just found that a bit quirky and weird after the entire point it seemed like they laid out before that. And before we get into the final point in this video, talking about human greed, consequences, and more, let's say, contemporary, modern parallels and allegories, if you are enjoying this video and want to watch more of it in the future, please remember to like and subscribe, as it greatly helps me out and the channel. Thank you. Now, as I said, the final point of this video, which this show also touches on, but more of a overall through line in the show, not just more isolated, is the point of human greed. As in Fluffy Paradise, while it is a fluffy cute show, the protagonist is given the task at the beginning of the show that, hey, you have to decide if human beings are worth their continued existence in this world. That God has given this task to the main character. And the general plot line and through line that the show goes through is supposed to somewhat tell the main character and the audience, okay, are human beings worth saving? You know, are they a moral creature, or are they just worth to continue to exist? And they do touch on a lot of interesting things in what they do in the show that is very, very contemporary to our own world as well, though I don't really like to do allegories in my videos. The show does really highlight, like, hey, human beings, not all, but some, especially in this case, a set group of organization of humans drove these monsters and these different animals out of their natural habitats. Not because they needed the land, not because they had some sort of purpose for the land or the area they drove them out from, but because they did so to drive them into other areas, to cause chaos, to cause hurt and pain and death, and use that for their own benefit, whatever that may be. Power, money, influence, position, which again, of course, really hits home to the unique nature that human beings have. We don't just kill because we need to. We kill because we want to. Not because it might sustain us for another day, giving us food, sustenance, but because it might give us influence, power. It can feed our greed, our need for control, and our need to just dominate all else. How humans, of course not all, but many, seem to have no issues with driving out anyone else, including other humans, but especially those that humans deem below themselves, which is basically every other living thing, that they're pests to be removed, exterminated, relocated on a whim, because humans deemed it so. How humans, especially this organization, in this case, in this show, are more than willing to upset any climate, any biome, any species, an animal, just to suit their own needs, ends, and goals, whatever those might be, no matter how morally corrupt they might be. But they still feel justified, because to them, any sacrifice is worth it, be it human or animal, but especially animal and monster in this case, that they have no regard for anything else. And that also made me think about, okay, so in this show, are they trying to have some sort of subtext allegory going on that this is human nature? Because if so, I mean, sure, you're not incorrect. A decent amount of human beings do think this way. I am interested to see how this plays into the show, if at all, in terms of if humans are worth surviving or not, when you have different factions with wildly different beliefs and, let's say, moral sets. It did also, for me, raise the question of, okay, but is this a bad thing? Like, is this just another natural part of the cycle of life? Like, do humans inherently have the right to exterminate, move, or do anything they want to with any sort of species or animal or monster in this world, or any world really, just because they want to? Because they do have the power and the ability to do so, and that ability was given to us through evolution, for the lack of a better word. So does that mean that because we have evolved to be able to do these things, that we have the inherent right to do so? Or, on the flip side, as many other humans would say, because of our unique position in the world, or in this world as well, keeping it in fantasy land here, do the humans not have some sort of responsibility that, because of our intellect, because of our ability to shape the world to our own desire and want and need, do we not have a responsibility or some sort of moral responsibility to protect these lesser life forms, to not just destroy everything in our path, but pursue some sort of higher purpose that just because we can doesn't mean we should? And the cycle of life was not made for, let's say, a being of our stature. Well, to be honest, I don't know. And I'm not going to get into philosophical debates about this, because that is definitely beyond the scope of this video, talking about a fluffy anime. But I just thought that, hey, I want to make this video because these questions, even though they might seem, well, pretentious or elitist, or, well, it's not something that an average anime YouTuber would talk about, but I thought, hey, because the show sort of, in my mind at least, brought these questions up, it would be interesting just to talk about them somewhat. And it felt very, very surprising to me that they even hinted on any of these aspects. Now, I am interested to see, like, if the show, as I mentioned earlier, actually will do anything with this. Like, if this will all tie into the grander plotline of, okay, will this play into if human beings are worth surviving or not, based on the task that Nima was given by God? Who knows? hopefully we will get some sort of conclusion to it, though I doubt it, at least not in this season. Anyhow though, what do you think of this whole thing? Do you think I extrapolated way too much based on some general outlines in some episodes? Or do you think that I interpreted this in a very reasonable way? I just went a bit overboard with it. No matter what you may think of this video or the contents of the video, leave your comments and thoughts on it down below. And if you like these sort of videos where I go more into, let's say, not necessarily philosophical, but more underlying meanings and aspects of shows or plot lines, through lines that many might not even talk about, or it's a bit extrapolated outside the norm, let's say, of what people will interpret, then leave those comments down below as well. Of course, if you want to watch any more videos from my channel, feel free to do so. That being said, I hope you have a good day, hope you all watch more anime, and I'll see you all in the next one. Hopefully more normal video. Anyhow, see you, bye bye.